was all about survival. Every decision that I ever made, it felt like a life or death situation. I always like to think I'm gonna be different, and like you can tell me there's gonna be an ebb and a flow to it, but I am gonna be the person that goes like straight up. It was not the case.
Hi, I'm Liz, and I healed from chronic fatigue syndrome. And I've come back to share my story and the stories of others who have healed. Nothing on this channel is medical advice nor meant to contradict what you yourself have discovered to be true. But I hope by sharing our stories, we can inspire you on your journey. Well, Astra, it's so good to have you here.
Oh, it's so good to be here. Thank you so much.
So we were connected via the Rewiring Your Wellness community, where you shared your powerful health recovery story. And just witnessing someone who was in the darkest depths of suffering not only heal, but become a shining beacon of light.
Aw.
It really touched my soul. And I'm just so grateful to have you here today.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor. I know we've tried a few times, so I'm just very grateful.
What's your purpose for sharing your story?
My purpose, let's see. Wow. Mainly to give people hope. As someone who has tried everything out there, been chronically ill for most of her life, starting at a very young age, I was truly, truly without hope. So if I can just maybe give one person a spark of hope, that there's something else out there that could help, and beyond that, the hope that you can heal yourself, then my heart will be totally full.
So can you describe how your journey with chronic illness began?
Well, basically from birth, actually. I was born with Lyme disease. My mother gave it to me, my brother, and my sister congenitally. And so when I was 6 years old, I was living in a house with black mold, had a broken water heater leaking carbon monoxide into my room. And I also got vaccinated all at once, so all of them. And then
Wow.
also like my family was very loving, but there was also a lot of trauma in the household, just like kind of craziness. So all of that and boom, a perfect storm. Perfect storm number one, I should say.
I hear the black mold or other types of mold just being its own perfect storm, and you
Yeah.
had all of these things.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a lot, especially for a little 6-year-old.
Can you give us a good idea of your functionality levels throughout your journey?
My functionality, for a large portion of it, was basically nil. I was bedridden for 13 years total. And when I was bedridden, my goal for the day was to go to the bathroom. And like once, because it was so excruciating to get there. The other years, I was a little bit better. I forced myself out of bed to like quote unquote live. So I've lived in absolutely amazing places all over the world, because I wanted to make up for the time. But when I was there, I still wanted to kill myself because I was so trapped inside of my body without hope.
And so you had chronic Lyme, chronic fatigue syndrome. What were some of your other challenges that you were dealing with as a child and into early adulthood?
So throughout the years, my physical and cognitive symptoms, they changed. Some of them stayed the same, but let's see. When I was like 6, going into like early adolescence, I vomited like 3 to about 7 times a day. And I had extreme environmental sensitivities, food sensitivities, cognitive issues, et cetera, et cetera. Then it kind of morphed into a lot of mental issues. So, like OCD, schizophrenia, anxiety, depression, like And I had bipolar 1 also. So like when I say anxiety and depression, it was very extreme. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'd have bouts of mania where I would just be flying so high, and then depression where it was I could not get out of bed and my mom was on suicide watch 24 hours a day.
Oh my God.
It really morphed. And then like later, when I was like 17, that's when like the pain came. One day I was doing all right, and then the next day, on like a level 50 out of 10 pain, and also couldn't walk. Um, then, of course, more. But those were the big ones out of nowhere. So I had a lot of people just telling me that it was in my head. And I had an awesome mother who like refused to ever accept that, and I agreed with her.
So, can you describe your experience seeking medical answers? Were there any doctors or diagnoses? Is it diagnoses? You may or may not have received that were helpful?
Yeah. Oh boy. So I've been to a lot of doctors in my life, a lot, all over the world,
Mm-hmm.
spent millions of dollars, all of my own personal money and inheritance, and most of my parents also,
Mm-hmm.
just seeking help and hope.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, we found some doctors who could diagnose certain things. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
I got the blood testing and all that for like Lyme and mold. I had multiple black mold exposures. So it was like I had a
Mm-hmm.
lot in my system because my body was unable to detox because of all the other challenges.
Mm-hmm.
So I found those, like MCS, et cetera, et cetera. It was helpful because it was just reassuring that it wasn't in my head. Because there was that part of me that believed these authority figures
Mm-hmm.
saying that I was just manipulating the situation. And because I already had so many neurological conditions, I
Mm-hmm.
doubted myself a lot. So I was
Mm-hmm.
like, well, maybe it is all in my head. Maybe I am manipulating people and like just want attention. Um, so my mother actually reassured me. She's like, hell no. That's not true. Um, but being that weakened, it's like
Mm-hmm.
there was a part of me that identified with that. So having the diagnoses from very well-known doctors
Mm-hmm.
was helpful.
Mm-hmm.
However, none of the treatments ever helped me. A couple of them like kept me alive.
What were some of those treatments? You shared your written story with me, and you seem to have tried it all. So, can you share some of the ones you saw the best doctors in the world? You got all the most expensive treatments. What were they?
Oh, let's see. So that would take like hours to actually
Yeah.
go through all of the treatments. Some of the weirder ones were like I injected myself with my own urine, bee sting therapy,
Right.
was hooked up to IVs every day for over 7 years. Detoxing, really restrictive diets, supplements, prescriptions, so like narcotics, benzos,
Mm.
all of that. Um, Ketamine, IV ketamine, hyperbaric oxygen. There's a lot more.
Hyperbaric oxygen. I've heard that. And did they show any improvement?
It helped a little bit. I stopped because first of all, I did it hundreds of times, and that's very expensive. But I'm not epileptic, but I had a grand mal seizure inside of that, inside the chamber. So after that, it was like, no, let's not do this anymore.
After all of this, did you have a turning point, and how old were you when you did have a turning point on a potentially new modality?
Yeah, I was, let's see here, like 29.
Okay.
And I was living in California
Mm-hmm.
specifically to go to a specialist. And then my dad had to move for work.
Mm-hmm.
So we moved to Colorado
Mm-hmm.
and quickly realized that no one was on par with this doctor keeping me alive.
Mm-hmm.
And so was not able to keep to do the treatments that were keeping me alive, like the IVs, et cetera, et cetera. And very quickly found myself living in my parents' backyard in a tent and compulsively making bird noises. Like my brain just went absolutely batshit. So then I was like, okay, we have reached another low and another perfect storm, clearly. I remembered about 6 or 7 years before this, my
Mm-hmm.
doctor in the Bay Area had told me about DNRS, and I did not believe him. But at this point, I had no other choice. So
So
I did.
DNRS, I did that program too.
Mhm.
We're not part of a cult, but it, but
Yeah,
you were skeptical at first.
yeah, for sure. Mainly because it did feel like they were saying that it was in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was really triggering for me to start doing a program that was saying like if you just think happy thoughts, then you'll heal yourself. Like how dare you? Not doing this again, and was really offended that my doctor had recommended it. But I tried it, and basically what it's about, it's like using positivity and making new associations, focusing on the good in life in order to heal your physiology.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds really simple. There's a lot of work that goes into it, but it
Mm-hmm.
totally works.
It really does. So DNRS works to heal the limbic system because it's based on the idea that the limbic system is the one that's driving chronic illness. Can you explain some of that science?
Totally. So it really has to do with the amygdala
Mm-hmm.
and calming down this fight or flight response, even if you don't feel like you're in the fight or flight response. If you
Mm-hmm.
have chronic illness, that's what's happening inside your brain. So, like when I first started, I just felt numb and exhausted. And yes, I had other physical symptoms, but like it didn't feel like my brain was saying I'm in a life or death situation.
Mm-hmm.
It still was the case.
Mm-hmm.
Just from the amount of like the load of the exposures, all of that I have been through, that's how my brain was responding and was stuck in that place.
Yeah, I didn't know myself that all these things can actually impact the brain.
Hmm.
Trauma, our environmental experiences, pathogens, they can impact the brain. And if our body is stuck in that flight or fight response, it can't complete the healing cycle. So it was very validating for me once I actually got into the program because
Hmm.
it really validated how this all happened in the first place.
Hmm.
It wasn't just, I didn't get this by thinking negative thoughts. I
Totally.
got this because of all these injuries to my
Hmm.
limbic system. And you certainly had every possible one. Um, yeah. So, do you think it's helpful to remove sources of stress before you begin DNRS? And did you remove any before you built your resilience?
Mm, great question. It's honestly like if you could remove stress from your life, whether you have a limbic system injury or not, then it's a great thing.
Mm-hmm.
So ideally, that would be great, but it's not necessary. The
Mm-hmm.
limbic system wants to tell you to not do this and like put it off, do this later. And
Mm-hmm.
like acknowledging that that's a limbic response is really important.
Mm-hmm.
So just do it. That's what I have to say. For myself, I was about a month or two into my rewiring journey, and I had the opportunity to move to the mountains with my aunt and uncle. They had no idea what I was doing. They just offered the space. And so, like, a big source of trauma and a rewiring opportunity was my family who I was living with. and also living in a tent in the backyard. It was, snowing in Colorado, not the best.
But you had so many sensitivities, so you were out in the tent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the environment was not great. And so my aunt and uncle offered me a space on their property in the mountains. And so that was awesome. Of course, it came with its own rewiring opportunities, but it was not necessary for me to remove myself from that situation. It was just a really exciting opportunity for me.
Yes. I love how you rephrase that. Rewiring opportunities. Yes. So when did things start to begin to shift? Was it a quick recovery up, or were there bumps along the way? You started this when you were 29, you said.
Yeah, there were definitely bumps along the way. I always like to think I'm gonna be different, and like you can tell me there's gonna be an ebb and a flow to it, but I am gonna be the person that goes like straight up. It was not the case. But I, especially at the beginning of my journey, I had a huge type A tendency. So I was like, if you tell me that 1 hour is good, 4 hours is going to be better. So I did that for a little bit, and it felt really good to my own limbic system. I had nothing else in my life, and I was totally used to making healing my number one job. That had been that way my entire life. So it was an easy transition, and my limbic system just kind of just soaked it all up. In my coaching, I do not recommend this for people. Like, everyone wants to kind of hear that, like, oh, 4 hours. It is really challenging, and it is not for everyone.
You're talking about the DNRS round. So there's the lifestyle guidelines, the communication guidelines, and there's the rounds themselves. It's like 8 talk aloud steps. You can also say them in your mind, but it's encouraged to talk them aloud. And then there's the visualization element. And so that's what you're doing for those most of the hours. Can you kind of explain just a little taste of what it is? I don't want to be too mysterious.
Of course, yeah. So first of all, it's going to be better if like you can just look into DNRS and like look at the DVDs yourself, but I'll give you a little bit of an example. As far as like the visualizations go, it's similar to manifesting and also like sports kind of psychology. And so that really resonated with me because I have a history of pretty high level sports.
High level sports. I guess you just pushed through the pain as a little kid, or?
So yes, like the 13 years that I was bedridden, I was like, nothing happened. And the other times I pushed through. Like during sports, I would take a break and just sob in the bathroom and then go back out and pretend like nothing happened. And so like I was playing this mental game my entire life.
Yeah.
So like I had a lot of crashes. So like I could sustain this for a while, and then eventually like I would just crash to the deepest level once again.
Well, how did you have friends and deal with this? How did people in your school?
Yeah. So that is kind of complicated. My yeah, so my approach was very limbic. It was all about survival. Every decision that I ever made, it felt like a life or death situation. So, like with my relationships, it was exactly the same thing. Like I compartmentalized because I felt like if anybody were to treat me like the sick girl, I would rather die. So I pushed and pushed to prove to myself and to everyone that I was not sick. I was like as healthy as they could become, no matter what was happening inside, like internally. So I would just basically disappear and I wouldn't tell anyone what was going on. As far as schools go, my mom would explain, but I would like insist that it was basically just giving them the bare bones information, saying she's sick. My friends knew that something was happening because I would just disappear. I was never able to be my authentic self at all. I was basically like repulsed by vulnerability. If anyone saw me as like weak, then I would rather die. And that's what I saw vulnerability as. Someone saw me as sick and they maybe like possibly pitied me. No,
Mhm.
excuse me. So like it was very extreme the way I thought. And so like I have been able to really easily make friends in my life,
Mhm.
but I wasn't really able to like have deep relationships at all and wasn't able to keep them. Like I could for a while when I was out like living, and then I would be sick for, in bed for 5 years and I would never hear from them again. So, yeah, it was quite extreme, but that's just how I lived. So when I started my rewiring journey, that was like, I want to have relationships where people actually know me. Figuring out a way to make DNRS work for me was
Mhm.
really important because I didn't want to pretend anymore, but
Mhm.
they're telling me like I need to create this life of positivity and laughter and fun
Mhm.
and all of that, but I want relationships where they actually know me. So it's like it's finding this balance. The way I kind of like to see DNRS, it's like you're healing, especially in like the first phase of it. Like you're
Mhm.
healing by taking this pendulum and swinging it to the side of extreme fun and play and laughter and whimsy and changing your language to kind of go along with that, all of that, in order to rewire your brain and change your physiology.
Okay. Well, so how can someone communicate their needs and
Mm.
be their authentic self, framing it in a brain-friendly way?
Oh, I love it. Yeah. That took me a while to figure out, honestly. Um, for the first 1 to 2 phases, you are focusing on changing your physiology or like changing your brain in a major, major way. So, really focusing on language and keeping it light and positive and silly is super important. So, in those phases, like making this as succinct as possible and only
Mhm.
telling people when it's necessary. With your family, with your friends, and you can say, like, okay, I'm recovering from, you can tell them what you're recovering from if you want. You don't have to. Saying, I am recovering, I am healing a brain injury, and
Mhm.
this is what I'm doing to do that. I am changing my language, I am focusing on fun and positivity, even though my reality is saying, stay in bed. This is
Mhm.
horrible. I'm going the other way, and that is going to heal me. So, this
Mhm.
is what you can do to help me. Like, if you see me like acting kind of triggered or, this, and this is happening, and like in that moment, you can do X, Y, and Z to help me rewire.
Mhm.
Giving people like really concrete action steps, like figuring out what you personally need is really important. Because things that are going to work for me are not necessarily going to work for everyone.
Mhm.
When I was doing this, like laughing and being really weird has always like helped me rewire. And I'm lucky enough to have those people in my life.
Yeah, you lead a dance party on Zoom every week, don't you?
I do. I lead 2 karaoke party or sorry, 1 karaoke party per week and 2 dance parties. And then a couple of my other friends lead them. Actually, a few. So we have dance parties 5 days a week and 1 karaoke party.
So, did you have any big dips during brain retraining, and what did you do to get out of it?
Totally. Like, so I went through like probably like my deepest ebb, and it was my first. And like the rounds and the typical things that they recommend with DNRS were no longer working, and they had worked wonders very
Mhm.
quickly. But then with this ebb, it felt like I was back to square one. I
Mhm.
wasn't, but that's what it felt like. And like all of my symptoms had returned, all of that. So I looked at like what they recommend with DNRS, and I realized like the one thing I wasn't applying was fun because I actually didn't really value it. Like I thought, what I'm going through is very serious and very complicated, and I have to be so intense about it. And like, okay, but if this is what they recommend and this is the one thing I haven't tried, then I'm going to do it. So
Mm.
kind of looking at it like another pendulum, like
Mm.
if I was swinging this pendulum to the side of extreme positivity, then why wouldn't that work if I included like play and fun and
Slay.
silliness on that with that pendulum? So I was like, okay, I'm living in the mountains, like off the grid, and I am 29. What would be really weird? Because that's my sense of humor. And I was like, okay, um, why not try things that I enjoyed doing when I was like 5 years old? Because that was the happiest I could remember ever being.
Mhm.
And I liked pretending I was an archaeologist. I liked tap dancing. I liked costumes and dress up. And I liked like talking in accents in Disney movies. So I was like, I am going to do all of that.
Yeah, I saw on Instagram you're dressed up like a pirate and
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that's so awesome. So one question,
Okay.
other question I have is some people have challenging childhoods or can't remember a time they were healthy. And one part of DNRS is recreating a past memory. Can you give insights on that?
Yeah. Um, if you cannot remember anything good, then just make it up. Like I am a huge believer in fantasy rounds. So like basically just becoming a Disney princess. I have done a lot of this. I'm like I just describe myself as Belle and then sing a few Disney songs and there you go. The most important part is that you feel good or at least try to feel good in the round. For me, I've had a lot of like good experiences, but when I first started, I was like, I could not even remember a
Mm-hmm.
moment in my life where I felt good and let alone happy. So I did only fantasy rounds. Then
Mm.
once I had rewired certain pathways, I started to be able to remember good things.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
I I had a very few. I did have happy memories from childhood, but I didn't have many that I could remember.
Hmm.
So I think I started off with just two memories, and then you think, oh, how is this going to work? I just have two memories, and then as you do them, you kind of
Hmm.
remember the good moments that you didn't initially. So
Totally.
I definitely know what you mean, and yeah, we can always use our imaginations because the purpose is about feeling good.
Mhm.
Exactly.
If you feel a little stiff when you're doing it, look
Mm-hmm.
at it like it's like story time. Like you are telling your limbic system a story, like it's a little kid. And when you tell a little kid a story, like they're so usually very enamored and like they want more magic. They just like crave it. And as an adult telling your a child a story, it's like you kind of give yourself permission to go to that place.
Give yourself permission to go to the place of magic. I love it. Yes. That's so good. And I'm going to take that into, I still do a little DNRS. I don't do the full hour every day, but yeah, I'm going to take that with me.
Awesome.
So I asked you in the written interview, I said, when would you say you were fully recovered? And you gave me a great answer.
So when I first started, being type A and having like a sports background, all of that, I'm like, when is this gonna end? Like, when can I say, like, if I'm at point A right now, when will I get to point B and when will this? Through my healing journey, I really changed that perspective
Mm-hmm.
and saw it like, I actually don't believe in recovery at all or like healing.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in transformation and that this is going to be a lifelong process. There's always going to be
Transformation.
yeah, there's always going to be something that I'm rewiring and working on. My symptoms, they went away pretty quickly. However, like I'm still working on things and I'm going to be working on things for the rest of my life. So
Mm.
learning to enjoy the process and this journey is the art of life.
Yeah. How's life now?
Oh, life is awesome. During certain things I was training on, I
Mm-hmm.
really identified with, again, like swinging the pendulum and rewiring to be superhuman.
Mm-hmm.
I am so focused now on the human experience, like
Mm.
being able to feel all emotions and not get stuck into loops. Like I am beyond that. Like that was the biggest thing I rewired, I would say.
So feeling the emotions, because sometimes we're taught to just push the emotions away,
Mhm,
and then on the other hand, people can get caught up in their emotions,
mm.
and that's it. But feeling them, and then, yeah.
Totally. My goal was to be able to feel emotions. So like feel sorrow, or anger.
Mm,
Human emotions that are not necessarily negative,
mm,
but they're negative. They become negative when you have a limbic system injury because you can't get out of them.
yes.
And so like that's where the difference between like some people think that limbic system retraining is actually like toxic positivity, and it's
Yeah.
really not.
Mhm,
There is a very clear intention, like what we're doing, and there's a methodical process to healing, and that includes like being so positive for a certain amount of time, and
mhm.
then um, what I like to help people do after that, it's like start incrementally introducing emotions back into your life.
Mm,
So I trained on this for quite a while,
mm,
and just being able to like to not be afraid of anger or
mm.
sadness, because like with some of my diagnoses, like bipolar one, I when I felt sad, I went to the deepest depths of despair and couldn't really get out. Like it took me a very long time,
Mhm.
and so rewiring that association that like sadness is a bad thing. Like sadness, there's a place for it.
Mm,
There's a place to feel grief in life. Like I just had like a death in the family, and I was able to feel that grief
mhm.
and then let it go. Like I'm still sad about it, but it doesn't take over my life.
So, what are some of the things you're doing
Okay.
for fun right these days?
Yeah. So I am really into cycling now, and I am training for a 5-day um touring tour this summer, which I'm very excited about.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. I hike 14,000-foot mountains. I run long distance. I lead dance parties every week, like we talked about. But I just love it so much. I'm learning Spanish for moving abroad, and
Ooh.
I love feeling my brain just retain information. When I first started, it was like I would hear something a million times and it just out the other ear. And now, yeah, I'm able to learn languages.
Ooh.
Creating the art that I've always wanted to, that feels like the authentic me. I'm living in community with other people and able to have rich, fulfilling relationships.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's just so wonderful, Astra. It's if someone met you, they'd never know what you've been through, but sometimes the most brightest lights have been in the darkest places, and your story is just so inspiring.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
So how can people learn more about your coaching and yeah.
Yeah, totally. So they can email me anytime at astra@yayneuroplasticity.com. You can message me on Instagram at yayneuroplasticity, or my personal account is yayastra. I'm on Facebook too, so you can message me on there. Really, anywhere you can find Yay Neuroplasticity, I'm at. You can also schedule a free consultation with my coaching if you're interested at all. You can ask as many questions as you want and get a little bit of a taste for my coaching, see if we resonate together,
Mhm.
and go from there.
Yeah. So do most of your clients have already brain retraining experience?
Most of them. Just it's a little bit easier to start that way. However, there are plenty of people that I coach also that really don't have a history of brain retraining at all, and I just teach them kind of the basics, and we go from there after I create kind of a personalized plan of action for them.
Ooh, that's so wonderful. Yeah, it's so great. And I've heard people say in the rewiring your wellness Facebook group, I've heard people say how much of a help and joy you are
Oh,
to
yay!
yeah. So
I
I'm
love the
so
community.
honored that I could chat with you today
Oh.
and more people can hear your amazing story.
Oh, thank you so much. And I really appreciate you, your time, and what you're doing for the world. It's freaking awesome.
Thanks, Astra. All right, take care.
Bye. Awesome.
Yay! Do a little dance. Yeah.
Well, I actually have a couple of questions for you.
Yeah.
I feel like I know you really well. We've never even talked really.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
long have you been rewiring?
So I
So I talk about my own experience with DNRS with Astra, but so this interview isn't forever. You can just go to my website, healwithliz.com, and there's an article where I talk all about it, what I did before, during, now, other similar programs, how I dealt with bumps along the way, and more.
Mhm.
so I'm now finding a balance.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Totally. I can
trying to
relate to
work
that.
on myself and healing my inner child. I'm doing a
Mhm.
lot of that work.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually really big in like the Gupta program. Like the inner child, the parts work,
Mhm.
like your main personality, like your true adult self,
Mhm.
and like integrating those parts. Um,
Mhm.
and it's part of the Gupta program that I really like.
Oh, you did the program too?
I looked at both of them. Yeah, I did mostly DNRS,
Mhm.
but combined a couple aspects of the Gupta program.
Mhm.
Like that was one. Like it's basically like IFS work. If you're familiar with that, like internal family systems.
Yeah, I just saw Ashley post about that from Dr. Katz's program.
Yeah, so that's really big in the Gupta program, but that was really helpful for me. I also really liked the more gentle approach that Gupta has, like, and finding kind of a balance for that
Yeah.
because I could go like I was saying, like 4 hours a day, like really type A. So knowing that like I will still heal if I'm gentle with myself.
Yeah, I think yeah, it's taking a little bit of each.
Totally. I like to, yeah, I love picking and choosing from different things and making it your own.
I think
Mhm.
everyone has their own spice to their
Uh-huh.
own recovery.
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing with your joy and yeah, weirdness, wackiness. I love it. And it is nice to see that people are resonating with that stuff. Even older women who were never able, and men, I guess too, who were, never able to be their inner child going
Mhm.
into like their 60s or what have you, I see. So
Totally. And like that's kind of where I come in. Like I didn't intend to first of all be a coach.
mhm.
I also didn't intend for this like kind of fun focused business to create, but it just kind of happened.
People need more fun in their lives. It's like
Totally.
healing
It's
can feel like a job, and
mhm.
that's not good for our limbic
Totally.
system. Yeah, that's so great.
Totally. Like, especially after the rewiring your wellness
Mhm.
retreat, like I got flooded with people asking me to basically teach them how to play and have fun. And so it was like, number one, I wasn't intending for that, like to be that person. But I did grow up with like in a very fun house,
Mhm.
albeit like really sick. I grew up around a lot of play. And so like
Mhm.
in that regard, I was able to like, um kind of just use imagination and play to heal and to
Hmm.
push forward. I didn't really realize what I was doing, and now I see the science behind it. So yeah, it's kind of how it happened.
Yeah. Okay. This was so good, and we're definitely going to include some of this like and banter because I feel like we
Yeah,
got good stuff here at the end too.
yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing this.
It was so good to connect and get your interview, and I think people are gonna love it.
Awesome. Yay. Well, thank you so much. I really am so honored.
If you were inspired by Astra's story, please give it a like so more people can find it, and check out my website for her written story. Thank you.